Hey guys, thanks for tuning in. Before we get started in today's video, don't forget to join our free Facebook community, get real answers to real credit questions, learn from some of the experts in our industry, as well as from other people that are in similar situations that are taking advantage of the free content, improving their credit and making their credit situation better. Hope to see you guys on the inside.
Now, you may be familiar with a FICO score, as that is actually the most common scoring model when it comes to calculating your credit score. But the Vantage scoring model is actually going to be separate. And 90% of lenders will stick with the FICO scoring model, but it is important to note that Vantage has some pretty unique advantages to it over the FICO scoring model. So, do you know how it is calculated and the benefits of, once again, using that Vantage scoring model, and who does the Vantage scoring model favor when it comes to the lenders or you, the user? So what is a Vantage score then? Well, it was created by the three major credit bureaus. That is going to be EQUIFAX, TRANSUNIon, and EXPERIAN. And it will help lenders, landlords, and financial institutions gauge your credit worthiness just at a glance. It will still look at your credit report, much like how a FICO score does, weigh all of the categories. Granted, it will be a little bit different, which we'll discuss later on, and combine it all into one easy to read score. So the most common Vantage score version is going to be 3.0, though there is a 4.0 as well. And the score ranges for Vantage score 3.0 is going to be relatively the same to FICO, with a score of 300 to 579 being considered very poor, 550 to 649 being considered poor, 650 to 700 being fair, 700 to 750 being good, and then 750 to 850 being excellent. So getting on into the major difference between the Vantage scoring model and the FICO scoring model, it is going to be how your score is weighed on your credit report. And if you haven't watched our FICO 8 scoring model video, you can go ahead and click that card up there in the top right hand corner and get a full breakdown of how FICO scores their weighted categories. So when it comes to Vantage, you may recall FICO was a 35% for the most weighed category, and that was going to be for their payment history. Well, Vantage actually takes this up a step further and going to 40%, and it is an extremely influential factor in how your credit score is calculated. And it's essential to make your payments on time and in full to maximize this. And it also really rewards those who do that. Since it is weighed so much higher, you will see a greater benefit in your credit score in a shorter amount of time by consistently making these payments than you would with a FICO score. So moving on to the second category then, the age and type of credit, which also combines the length of credit history from the FICO 8 scoring model video we did, is going to be weighed in at 21% as opposed to the 30% for the FICO scoring model. Now, this is important because the longer you have your lines of credit, the better. So we always recommend to keep your old cards, because the older they are, the better this category is going to do. And it's essential to have them in good standing for a long period of time as well. So making those payments on time, which goes back to payment history as well, it really just builds up your length of credit history and bolsters your credit portfolio. So moving on to credit utilization, you may be familiar with a lot of our previous episodes where we talk about how important this category is. Well, with the Vantage scoring model, it is weighed at 20% as opposed to the 15% in FICO. So it is weighed a lot more heavily, and usually consumers are advised to keep their balances as low as possible when it comes to paying off their bills at the end of the month. Now, the reason why this is because if you owe more than 50% generally, but it can even go as low as 20% sometimes, depending on the credit card company, you can be labeled as high risk, which can lower your credit score as well because it lowers this category. So we here at the Credit Agents actually recommend you keep it at around 7%, and this is because you can maximize the credit score gained because you're paying off your credit on time, as well as having a low utilization rate, and you will be building up your length of credit history and keeping those accounts in good standing as well. So, like I said previously, it's a very important aspect of your Vantage score. So if you're calculating your Vantage score, keep that in mind. So moving on to the fourth category, which is going to be total balances weighing in at 11%. Now, this is going to be a little bit less overall than what is weighed on the FICO score, so it isn't going to be as heavily influential in calculating your score, but it's still an important factor to consider when calculating your score for those applications. So in order to have a good standing in this category, you will be advised to keep credit balances paid and down as possible. And this relates once again to credit utilization, keeping that utilization rate down as well as your payment history. So it's closely linked with those, but you also want to make sure you do this with all of your lines of credit. And make sure you are using these lines of credit so you don't risk them getting closed out as well. So the fifth category we're going to be talking about is recent credit behavior. And this is going to be coming in at 5% of your total Vantage score. So it isn't really that influential when it comes to calculating the score, but it's important nonetheless because it will quickly roll into a snowball effect if you're not careful. So it essentially focuses on kind of new lines of credit that you're applying for. So if you're applying for mortgages or, an apartment, you want to make sure you space out those applications, because each time you apply for a new line of credit, it actually will have a hard inquiry check on your credit report, which means that an institution or landlord is running a credit check. Now, hard inquiries, just one-off, can't lower your score that much, but if you have too many in too short of a period of time, much like having 50% or over on your utilization rate, it will label you as high risk, lowering your score. So, like I said previously, it's not as big of a deal with Vantage score than it is with FICO, but it's still an important habit to get into because chances are you're probably also worrying about your FICO score as well. So, be considerate of your recent credit behavior.